What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the Monday Resultsdb show. And this week's for the Masters. Not sure about my guy TJ. We'll get to you in a sec, but I don't know if you got the Masters hangover, but I saw a picture this morning of Hideki Matsuyama just chilling at the airport, got the green jacket draped up over the chair, and who knows? They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Maybe he was hungover. I don't know. And he's just grinding away there. But I'll bring you in my guy TJ Laessig at TJL5124. TJ, how you doing, my man?
Oh, I saw that picture too. It was great. Good for Hideki. He's been someone that I've been a fan of his for a couple of years now. It's good to see him get it done. He tried as hard as he could to give it away with the putter down the stretch, but luckily for him, he built himself up enough of a cushion that he could afford to do so. But man, he was just striking the ball unbelievable. Every approach shot, it felt like he was sticking it, and then when he didn't, he would just chip it right next to the pin. So awesome showing by him.
Oh, it was awesome to see. We've been waiting for Hideki's win for a long time, and it was funny that, the graphics have all been posted now of Jordan Spieth was 1350 something days, and now 1340 something days later, it's Hideki getting his first win. It just happens to be at the Masters, getting his major. You sometimes forget about those things. Being a longtime Ricky Fowler fan, you just think about guys that have been grinding for a long time that have been so close in plenty of majors, and they still have that same fire in their belly. They still have that same motivation. So I thought it was incredible for the game, golf, Japan, everything that's been talked about. Of course, you made me think about something there. We just brought up some of the stats. Was Brandel Chambly basically getting dunked on Twitter yesterday with his pen and paper stats of Hideki's missing fairways. So he probably can't close this thing out, but it's all scrambling. But I mean, that's kind of what he does. So when the ball striking's on, he doesn't have to make a lot of putts. He's putting from 2 feet, 3 feet. You mentioned it. We saw it down the stretch, that goes in the water. Not sure why he didn't just lay up there. You had a lead that was insurmountable pretty much for most. If you think about how well he was playing, should have laid up, I thought. But then you've got, the bunker on 18 after the perfect tee shot and the twirl. So I don't know. It was definitely interesting down the stretch. Xander, I'll bring up one quick thing on that. I just think he mentioned it in his own press conference, and I love the play. I like the press on 16. You can't just play it to the green. That's not going to put any pressure on the guy. And he mentioned it. I'm up against a guy that's like a robot. We've been calling him a Hideki bot forever. I mean, this is just a situation where you absolutely have to try and basically make a hole in one there to not only help your score out and give yourself an opportunity, but put the pressure on Hideki, who's, again, he played that one right and just went to the proper side of the green, almost Tiger-esque, where you just have your strategy down the stretch. He puts it on the green, 2-putt to make a par, put it in the fairway on 18, and you should win. And sure enough, he did. Like I said, we'll look back in history, seeing the Hideki putt for the win, and they'll only show us that little 1-footer. They won't show the 5-footer that he missed straight before, or 4-footer, whatever it was. Classic Hideki, though, and again, great shout out to him. That's awesome to see. We've all been following for quite a while and waiting for that. And I think it was Empire Maker joked on Twitter, said 10 more years of playing Hideki, right? We're back in on it now. We got to get on him. 8,300 was just an awesome price for him. I definitely didn't have enough, but it's a guy I'm usually on at that price tier, but so many other good plays last week as well. And speaking of which, Will Zalatoris, 7,300, Connors, 6,900, all these guys still came through. So I've already marked it down on my notebook, play all the chalk at the Masters, at least. Any other final thoughts on the Masters before we move on here, TJ?
Yeah, I feel like I nailed the value range with, like you just said, Connors, Zalatoris, but just didn't get the right guys up top for myself personally in my lineup. So not my best Masters week. Patrick Cantlay in my main lineup just didn't even give me reasonable sweat. Was just completely dead right from the jump. But yeah, hey, so bad. It was a fun tournament. Masters always a fun time. Crazy to see DJ missing the cut. I never would have guessed that in a million years. So it just goes to show that we always talk about it, but anything really can happen on a given week. And I was very heavy on Rahm this week, and took him until Sunday to really get it going. But I feel like Rahm is just playing his B game every week and finishes in the top 10 just about every tournament. But I'm waiting for him to close one out sometime soon as well.
Yeah, that's what it's been. It was going to be tough. Always, there's a little bit of, consensus going in that maybe the new dad thing, obviously we brought it in as narrative as well, like we all like to do, but he looked a little gassed, but I don't know. He still had a good Sunday, and it was 72s before that. It wasn't like he was playing bad. It's just like you say, he just seemed to never do enough. Rory is the one with the bigger issues and the bigger problem. I really had high hopes. I thought, kind of like the Jordan Spieth situation before Jordan Spieth, started getting good again, or was quote unquote back, where I thought, with a guy like Rory, even in his roughest times, he still has always played well at the Masters. Same as Spieth was always doing in his downswing in his bad years. He still was coming through at the Masters, different majors and situations where he was still able to find his way and fight through it. And Rory just was not able to do that, just seemingly completely lost. And that really hurt me. So funny enough, Noto and we'll get into our guy Notorious. He had himself a pretty good week, probably still tilting a little bit, and we'll show reasons why, but can't be mad at it. Good, solid, profitable week. Had some great picks out there. I joked all week. I had him on the Wednesday show. I said I was just going to cross out most of his picks. I crossed out like the Westwood ones. I got those right, but not the others. And he had himself one hell of a week. So that was awesome to see. We'll go through some of that here. I just thought it was funny that he sold me on Bryson, and Bryson obviously didn't come through. He definitely came through more than the guy I sold him on, though, which was Rory. So we'll see about that for next year. My guy Noto, happy for him here. We're going to do it a little different this week, TJ. We're going to do it just dollars up. So this is the $5 drive to green. Then we'll get into the 3 milli makers. There was the $10, the $100, even the 44.44 is down here if we get a chance to get to it. Some guys want to shout out there, but the Mega Snowman we'll talk because Noto was in that as well, the 888. So not all just milli makers here, but go through some of it. And we'll start off with the $5 drive to green. Did you play this week and max it out?
I did.
Yeah.
Did not go
do
great.
we want to look at it? No,
I mean, we can. I'm still fun to look at it for sure. I can show you my player pool and such. But
we'll go back.
Results-wise, nothing great.
We'll go back to it for sure. We'll talk first about the winner. A couple other guys to shout out here for sure. But Toe. So I got a TO in my name. Maybe I'll get to one of these tops eventually. This is how it goes. $100,000, 568 points. And it was Xander Reed, opted for Reed over Spieth, which was nice there. And it still worked out. Hideki obviously had the winner in there. Cam Smith at 8,200. Will Zalatoris and Corey Connors. Like I said, the values pretty much came through, but there was still some uniqueness here and enough to do damage to take it down. So what did you think of this lineup, and then anything that stands out for you there?
Yeah, it's a nice build right here. I think, like you said, Zalatoris and Connors were two of the best value plays on the board, and definitely both came through, avoiding the mess of the top and just starting with Xander. Obviously worked out very well. And also Xander was not getting a ton of talk coming into the week. So knew that he would be a lower owned play. So got a nice ownership discount on both him and Reed there. And then, Matsuyama coming in under 10%. I know that I didn't play Matsuyama myself. Just didn't think that he was going to have it. And then Cam Smith, I thought was another real solid play coming off of, his performance in November, and just someone that can get around here. So nice build overall. 110K, 19K, 2 8Ks, a 7 and a 6. So a little bit of everything, and only Corey Connors really on the chalkier side. Other than that, keeping things pretty reasonable from an ownership perspective. So I think it's a really solid build overall, and a nice lineup from Toe.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think that last point you made stood out. It was still just enough of an ownership discount. Obviously, Hideki coming in under 10 is nice in a large field tournament like this, but still Reed was right there, just 13. Zalatoris, people didn't want to commit. That's still, heavily owned for a value play, but not even close. 13%. It's not like he was 20 or 25% or something where you really had to think about it. You either played him or you didn't. 13's a fair number. And I think the biggest thing is, like you said, and just looking back, a mistake that I can learn from and think about on my part, not saying Cantlay's not a big game hunter, and he had the history and he's such a good ball striker and it's all results based now. But if you just think about it, nobody really wanted to play Xander when you could play Rory, Rahm, Bryson, DJ, all these guys above him. And X was just sitting right there at one of those sort of sticker shock things where sometimes you just don't want to play them because they're 10K. But if he had been 9,700 and Cantlay was 98, maybe that would have made you feel better. Almost just one of those things where people will bet a guy at 20 to 1. But when he's 16, they leave him on the board because 20 is like an auto bet and 16's not. It's kind of similar in that, range for myself. So shout out to Toe. That's a very nice lineup. Well built. Everything makes sense. Skipped over the Cantlays, the guys above X, and Spieth filled it in with some of the common value plays and then mixed it in the middle with Cam Smith and Hideki using 2 8K guys. So definitely like that. We'll get to Noto. Shout out Montes the Beast. Another, regular we've seen here now, a couple of big wins going for him in the last couple. So another good lineup here. He had it built up pretty similarly, just a couple swaps there, right? Went to Spieth instead of Reed, went to Answer instead of Cam Smith, and then left $700 on the table. So all to each their own. That looks good to me. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's a good way to get unique, especially in something like the $5. I'm always leaving, anywhere from 49.1 and above. So probably just shook out that way with the opto on 150. We'll get to Noto, our guy, because we're going to spend some time on him, but M. Bedard as well, Dardog in the Discord. Great week for him. I know he got a FGWC seat as well. So definitely shout out to him and X, Webb, Scotty Scheffler. Nice, Hideki, Will Zalatoris, and Connors. And man, going back to Zalatoris for a second, I saw a picture last night of the 2017 Walker Cup, and it had basically your boy Doug Gim, Scott, I can't even think of them all. Scotty Scheffler, Colin Morikawa, Will Zalatoris. Like, the team is just stacked, and they're all up and comers, and there's more to come, Thornberry and whatnot. So just crazy to see how these guys progress and what we're dealing with now, where all these guys can just go out on any given week. Like, Will Zalatoris was almost in a playoff yesterday with Hideki for a Masters green jacket. That's incredible. And he's, then there's the whole thing about how his ratings and all the rankings go, and he's not even qualified yet, and all these factors. So pretty crazy for them. Let's go to Notorious, our guy. This was a different lineup than we'll see in some of the other tournaments. He put up a good showing in quite a few places, but we'll start with the $5 here. Third place, $20,000. Spieth, Finau, Hideki, Cam, Zalatoris, and Connors. And it's kind of an offset, right, of that the lineup we just looked at the top, with leaving money on the table and going Spieth and Finau versus Xander and Reed. It's the same lineup below that. So give me your thoughts on this and just some sort of the game theory or thought process you think Noto put in behind this lineup.
Yeah, another strong lineup here. I think that, getting off the board a bit with Hideki, something that you definitely want to do in a lineup, especially when you're including Spieth and Connors, who I'm sure Noto knew were both going to be popular picks. But Finau was a pretty sneaky play as well. Just someone that was going overlooked. I mean, when you have these major fields, right, there's so many names that people that typically would get buzz on a week-to-week basis can just go completely overlooked. And I think Finau definitely fell into that category a bit. And then, leaving that 800 on the table, like you talked about, especially in something like the Masters where we have the smaller field. I think that's a very viable thing, just to make sure that you're not getting yourself caught up in any duplicated lineup situations like that. But yeah, really, I mean, 6 super solid golfers here that are all in pretty decent recent form, and Hideki taking it down for him. So nice lineup by Noto.
Yeah, I like it a lot. We talked a little bit on the Wednesday show about that 8K range and how most people were using more 7Ks, because not just Zalatoris was there, but then remember, you had Neiman, you had Answer, you had Sergio, Scott, Bubba, you name Louis, everybody that was there, right? You had all these guys that, people, myself included, wanted to use. And there was, just opportunity to look for ways to be different. And then especially in a Connors lineup where you knew he was going to have ownership. And if you were using Spieth like he did, then this was the perfect way, in my opinion, to mix it up. You leave the 11Ks, the 10Ks, the full 5-figure range off the table. You leave the heaviest owned guy besides Spieth in the 9K range, which is Cantlay, out of the mix. And then you just drop down and run a Spieth. Finau, we talked about too. Any week we're getting him at 12%. I'm playing him because we play him at 25% and don't care. So why would we not play him at half the ownership when in reality he's been playing some great golf? It just didn't completely pan out. Now, like I said, Noto's probably still a little bit disheartened, because if you look at the Sunday of some of these guys when he's in the hunt with his sweat, and it gets worse later on, unfortunately, but Finau, Connors, Spieth, all not really doing much. Spieth did turn it on in the back nine, so can't really say that, but Finau, Connors definitely could have done more and came through in the clutch for him. If you look above, Connors and Spieth were there, so Finau was his big differentiator, and then there was no Spieth or Finau in the first place lineup. So realistically, Finau was his guy, and I know what it's like. I think a lot of us know what it's like playing PGA DFS to have Finau have a letdown on Sunday. So, that's an all too common thing, and it's unfortunate, but still a nice showing there. We'll flip over. We might go back if we have time. It's the Noto show, though, so we're going through it here. But this is the first Millie Maker. So this is the $10 huge field, 473,000 in the field. Mr. McGiblets 11, fourth place, first. I don't even know what else. 16th going down, and there's Notorious down there again with that same lineup. So he mixed and matched. Obviously ran his pools across, so we can look at that in a minute. But a lot of RG members, Aaron, Ron, Dead Benjamin, the Mish, all in the mix there. But let's talk about the winning lineup here, TJ. We've got Similar to what we've seen, because obviously Zalatoris, Connors, Matsuyama, Spieth, those are going to be there. But, looks like Xander was the difference maker. And I'm just going to see real quick here. Rahm was 84 points. Okay, I was going to say he didn't really turn it on till Sunday, but that was the challenge, right? You had all these guys at the top that didn't come through. And, you had guys like Xander go out and put up 100 points still. So here's the lineup. You can tell me your thoughts. I mean, it's $400 on the table. It's pretty similar to what we saw, but I think, the ownership is spread out a little bit, but it was enough to take it down at 571.5 points for the difference between first and second for the $1 million.
Yeah, it's actually impressive that with a field of 473,000, that a lineup this chalky is able to get to the top, right? I mean, I think maybe Justin Thomas was in there, but between Spieth, Casey, and Connors, they had to be three of the top, if not the three top owned guys. I think JT was pretty high owned, generally speaking, too. But yeah, nice lineup. Obviously fitting Hideki in there. And yeah, I think what you just said about Xander is really the difference maker, because essentially if you went above Xander in pricing, you weren't going to get value, and you weren't going to have a lineup that got to the top of the GPPs. So can clearly see that was a differentiator across all of these winning lineups. And yeah, another nice solid build here. Again, 6 super solid golfers, all of which were great plays this week, striking the ball well, and guys that a lot of people that have a history too of being able to perform at the Masters, obviously, aside from Zalatoris.
Yeah, I was just looking through some of the other ones, and we're pretty much seeing the same theme, right? Like it's Rahm, X, because they're the only two that did anything, and it still did get to the top because of those value plays, but it was pretty close to accurate with, looking at Xander here. Obviously, Cantlay just completely disappeared, almost DFL, doesn't even make a run, a cut, anything going on with Cantlay. And then it's funny enough, he's in the field this week for the RBC Heritage. So will be some discussion there when, Kenny and I do the podcast tonight, Cards Note to myself tomorrow, and then Wednesday show this week with the guest. But I think that this stands out to me as a little bit that it was so close to being almost that balanced build getting there, right? Like going back to just the 9K guys, because Xander's right there for $200 more. If he had been 9,900, it would have been the same thing with it showing. So you're seeing 5-figure guys pop in, and mainly it being Xander at 100, but it just goes to show, like, even at the Masters, even at anything. So you had DJ, who was it? DJ, Bryson, Rory, and then Rahm. Those are the other 4. And those guys didn't do anything, or, some of them, DJ and Roy, didn't even make the cut. So that just goes to show too, like, you can still look for those builds. You can still use these guys accordingly and get there with a lineup like this. So again, shout out to Mr. McGiblets. We'll go down, to the next one and look at the $100, because this one's, just was a complete blowout, and all in Finn just crushed. So if you look here, I'll pull it up, all in Finn. First, second, fifth, 36, 76, just a bunch of lineups, has the right player pool for sure. So we're going to look at this one. Fate Bender up there, as always. We've done some case studies on Fate Bender here. Continue doing their thing. Go Sixers go. We all know, great player, all sports across. So no surprise to see him up here. Knowlesman had a handle on this thing for a little while. I was keeping an eye on it there. And then a bunch of other guys. Shout out my guy, the Chubasco, Dodge 5MG, DJ on Twitter. Good guy, man. Awesome guy to chat with. Got to meet him last year. And the Whistles Go Woo just keeps crushing everything everywhere. Not quite taking it down here or anything, but he's been across a lot of sports. We've seen him a lot lately, ever since that legendary interview after winning the big money. So we'll go back here, TJ, all in Finn. So this was the winning lineup, and it actually was a double stud. It was a Rahm X, Hideki, of course, and then Zalatoris, Connors, Palmer. And I'll get your thoughts on it first. I've certainly got some of my own, but kind of with everything we've already talked about and then just piecing it together, I do like this quite a bit. But what are your thoughts here for the winning lineup for all in Finn?
Yeah, I like it a lot. Zalatoris, Connors, Palmer, all my value play article. John Rahm was my top play of the week. How did I not come up with this lineup? Xander,
really
Matsuyama to round things off. But yeah, I think it's a great build. And I think that getting two guys above 10K almost automatically would have made you pretty unique. I feel like in the major fields, especially, people don't typically go that heavy on the stars and scrubs, just because you can get, like we talked about, so many values and kind of that upper mid or the mid range in the 9Ks. So I like that from a build perspective. And I like the value plays that he chose. Obviously, I think 3 of my favorite plays. Palmer just felt pretty criminally underpriced as well, along with Connors, all the way down to 6,500. So really, really strong build here and shakes out nicely from an ownership standpoint too.
Yeah, I'm quite disappointed that I didn't have this one or something along these lines, because this is what I want to talk about. And this is definitely, if you guys watch the Wednesday show with Notorious and myself, is just, to me, it's just the perfect ensemble of putting it together, because the two things I talked about, amongst the million other things that you guys know I talk about, everything, I just never stop talking, but is two guys above 10K. I said this to Noto. I said, these fields are all top heavy, completely top heavy. Even in this one, it's $1 million to first and 75,000. Well, I guess it would have been 100 to second, right? And then 50. So then they chop it up because they had a dupe. But either way, my point was really using the two guys above is not something that's going to be extremely common. The field was still tight enough with, let's say, 70 guys in play. There wasn't enough value plays. But what I love most is the second piece that I talked about and really liked. And that was, if you're going to use Connors, let him be your fifth guy in. And I know that's not true, that, you know, you could go back here. He's clearly the sixth guy in, plenty of winners and higher scoring lineups. It's just the way it worked out. But I'm talking about, we don't know that going in. We know that right now. So when you were building going into it, and that was me talking, I was like, man, I know people are going to be on Connors, and I know he's probably a great value play. I can't just not play him and fade and pivot, etc. But how can I get different with him? And so Noto and I looked at builds where he was the fourth or fifth man in and just getting a little bit more aggressive. And especially in the $10 that we just recapped, 473,000 entrants. Like, it's just a miracle the way things happen and they get there. But, you know, there's a lot that goes into it. I get it. But this was, to me, the perfect build, and one that I wish I would have come across, because you were able to still fit in all the value plays that we like. Palmer was definitely high on my list at 6,500. Still got a very reasonable ownership. Connors was the only guy even near 20. You know, Rahm second at 16.9, but 0.9, but that's basically because at the top, some of those guys had to be owned in some way, shape, or form. So it just made sense to me. So to do Rahm, X, two guys that play really well, and it almost too lines up. If you think about it, the Memorial, I kept talking about this last week, just a tough golf course where guys battle it out. Xander was +8 at the Memorial and then battled back to a top 10. The same time, Rahm and Palmer were in the final group winning it. And, you know, the penalty situation and all that. And then Decky has done well there. And then, you know, Zalatoris and Connors, just the best value plays. So really, really like that winning build, and congrats to All In Finn. They did shake it up a little bit. I noticed, like, if you went here, so Finau, Scheffler was the swap, right? You had the other four guys the same. So it looks like a 2v2 strategy, which we'll look at his pool and his or hers pool in a second to sort of dissect it a bit more. I believe Fate Bender was not a dupe, and it was a different lineup. Yeah, it was. You know, Victor Hovland just scores like crazy. So X, Hovland, Neiman won't be here because, you know, obviously the way he played. But if you look at the guys like this in the past, I've talked about it, Xander, Hovland, Neiman, just to name three, guys that can make mistakes and still score. Cam Davis, another guy of ours that we like to follow. Matt Wolff, another guy. These guys can make mistakes in a tournament, and then you still turn around and wonder how the heck are they up there in 20th place on a winning GPP lineup, because then you go look, they're like top 10 in DK scoring. So 82.5 out of Hovland, but this was Fate Bender's lineup. You know, any thoughts on this one before we look at All In Finn's pool?
Yeah, Hovland made a 7 on the first hole, and then continued to, like, he was like back to even by the 6th hole. Like, the guy can just fire birdies, like you said, and one of those people that tends to outscore his finishing position almost every tournament. But yeah, I like this one a lot, and we can see, I mean, we've seen Fate Bender around, can see that no one above 15% ownership, like definitely someone that is paying attention to ownership projections, making sure that he's getting himself different, especially in these top payout heavy structures. Scheffler, thought was a great pivot play. You know, I mean, Scheffler, Hovland, Neiman, like all those young guns. I was all over all of them this week. Rose was not on my radar, and I was honestly shocked to see him perform the way he was able to. But at the same time, I mean, 4% Rose, that's at 7,200.
Yeah,
we always talk about the long-term form. I didn't quite see it with Rose, just because, man, I've seen him be so bad in times recently, but nice lineup overall. And, you know, really, really good job of making sure that he avoided pretty much every single chalky option and still put together a lineup with 6 really, really strong golfers.
Yeah, and that made sense too. You look, no 11s, no 9Ks, no 6Ks. There's still strategy going into it, not just picking low owned plays. Like they still have some double digit ownership. They're 10, 11, 9.5 can round up to 10, 15. And then a couple guys in Decky and Rose a little lower. Interesting to see Decky a little higher owned in the $100 makes sense, right? A little sharper makes sense from that perspective, a little bit higher dollar buy-in. And then the Rose thing, he wasn't even popping in sort of long-term. He was popping in the sense of the field plays where, you know, everyone was sort of getting the feels for Adam Scott, myself included, Bubba Watson, Sergio, guys that had green jackets or have green jackets and can go out and do their thing here versus, and Rose would be the same, you know, some heartbreak, but could definitely win this thing. And you just went down to that range instead of taking the, you know, emotional plays at the top of the 7K range, take the same play down below. And realistically, Rory has been playing horrible as much as I loved him, but you know, not that bad, but not as bad as Rose has been playing, but it was the same sort of feel for $3,000 cheaper. He's either going to show up or he isn't. When you're putting him into a lineup like this as the last guy in, put him in. Who cares? He's 4%. You're already getting the love with the ownership side of things. So it's kind of worth it from that perspective. I think that was a good choice there, but nonetheless, we'll look at the pool here for All In Fin. I didn't look at it yet myself, so I'm kind of interested to see how aggressive it was to just completely nail it and crush it like that. But it's nice, man. It's kind of like what we like, right? So look who the number one owned leverage and top owned play is, though, and it's Hideki Matsuyama. So that's certainly a good start when he's winning the tournament and putting up 118 DK points. But like we always see, right, TJ, there's a lot of leverage. Everything in green is all leveraged up. You know, talk about the pool that you see here, talk about some of the other stuff that you see, and we'll run through it. But it looks like just scrolling down, a few one-offs down at the bottom, but for the most part, pretty tight and quite a bit of leverage up there at the top.
Yeah, well, it makes sense why we saw so many up towards the top when you're going 4x the field on the winner when the winner's coming in under 10%. So awesome play there. But other than that, the thing I noticed, right, is that it's not getting too crazy in terms of, you know, Paul Casey, Corey Connors, Justin Thomas, some of the chalkier plays, still keeping them in the player pool and getting slightly overweight on each of them, getting above the field on Finau. Like we said, just seeing a lot of green, a lot of leverage, getting way overweight on like someone like Matt Jones. So really not overcomplicating things, just taking the kind of one big stand at the top in Hideki, peppering in some of the by far, you know, best plays from a value standpoint, from an ownership standpoint. And then, you know, we're not seeing DJ, or we could see that he's able to survive 21% can't lay. So you don't have to get every single thing perfect, but when you take your stand on someone like Hideki at 10% ownership and that person goes off to win the tournament, looks like the way that the rest of the pool is built, you're giving yourself a ton of different opportunities to make sure that you hit that right combination of 6. So I like the construction here of the 150.
Yeah, and picked a lot of great players, right? If you just look down the board, like, I know it's the Masters, and so they all look great, but I mean, like Hideki, Finau, Casey, JTX, Scott, Cantlay, like all these bigger names, and then even like Webb, Hovland, Bryson rounded out. We all know because we play DFS every week who Matt Jones and Max Homa and these guys are, but I'm just saying, like, picked a lot of the great plays, still got the leverage where needed. And the 2 points you brought up, one will be repetitive because we say it all the time, you're allowed to make mistakes, right? When you space your pool out like this, and you and I both love this sort of strategy of doing it, is you definitely are still allowed to make mistakes because you still have, you know, almost 75 Hideki lineups. He's almost 50%. He's got 150 in the pool. So he's almost got 75 Hideki lineups. That's plenty to work with. That I'm sure there was some Cantlay combinations that went sour, and that's going to happen, but you've got enough that you can still put yourself in contention there. And then the second one I think is even bigger, is too many times with a guy like Corey Connors at 6,900, who we know is going to get heavy ownership. Everyone's like, got to fade the chalk, but you don't have to fade it. You can play it and then play it differently. And that's what I kept trying to stress on the Wednesday show last week was, and even All In Fin here, he's overweight still, but he's not all in, you know, no pun intended with the name there. You know, he's in on Corey Connors, but he's not going all in. And like I said, looking back, that's why I love this lineup so much. I'm sure he has plenty of lineups where Connors was the sixth man, but it's just interesting that the top lineup and the winning lineup by a decent margin in this tournament specifically was looking for a couple ways to get different. Are most people going to run 2 studs? Probably not. Are most people using Connors going to have him in as the 6th man? Probably. So I'm going to put him in as the 5th man and allow myself to be a little bit more aggressive to get after this thing and go after that top heavy structure. Not fading Connors, using him with lesser owned guys accordingly in a sense of a way that makes sense logically and game theory wise, and then flipping it completely with the roster construction, which is everything that we're talking about here. Back to Fate Bender. Didn't do anything crazy, skipped out on a lot of the higher owned plays, doesn't have Connors, for example, went and opted to go to a guy like Justin Rose. Instead, could have obviously dropped down to Connors at 6,900 and got himself 90 points instead of 86.5. But that's just didn't matter in the end anyway. But I like the build, and the focus is obviously, like you said, a lot more on ownership and then how you're using guys and what the roster construction looks like within that. So any other thoughts on this one, TJ, or should we move on?
No, great lineup, great constructions from a MME standpoint, and well done. Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's nothing super fancy, right? They're not going way off the board with some of these plays. It's just picking solid players, identifying where there's some leverage, and making sure you have the right combination of projection and ownership within those lineups.
Yeah, we're gonna do something here real quick. I just want to flip back. I think that's why I remembered it. Where's it at here? Flipping back and forth. Knowlesman. Yeah, shout out Knowlesman. I said it didn't quite get there in the $100, but I remembered where I was tracking and then what I saw. And shout out to Knowlesman, $1 million in the 44.44.
There we go.
We're not going to spend a lot of time on this one. I'd rather go to the 888, look at Noto's construction and do some of that to round us out. But just shout out to Knowlesman because that was huge. Shout out Hoop. Good guy. Awesome to see, man. He had himself a big week. I know we can't look at FanDuel, but he also put up a $50,000 score over there. So light work for Hoopster. Nice to see 150,000 plus from what I saw posted. Shout out to the Takeover, Kyle Rosso, some other guys that we see here. All the Rotogrinders members, of course. Let's hop back though. I want to spend a little time on this. So I'm not going to spend too much time here, TJ, but I like this tournament quite a bit, right? This was the 888. If you didn't have the 44.44, which most of us don't, to hop up to, and you'd wanted to play something with a little smaller field, and you thought, look, do I put 8 or 9, call it 9 lineups, 888, but call it 9 lineups for 900 and try and go for this top heavy millie with 28,000? Or do I go for this little bit more balanced structure? You can't really call it completely balanced, but 200, 150, 30, 20, 50. It's not terrible, but $888. And even if you can only chuck 1 to 3 lineups, and I'm using 1 in that previous example versus 9 in the 100, I don't mind that strategy, especially if you want to take a shot at something like the Masters where there is some big prize pools. So shout out to Tiger Best Woods. Nice name, nice win. 533 points. Obviously much less required to take down this type of tournament with this field size and buy-in, a little bit more safety plays and whatnot, if you will. But really like this build too. This made sense to me from a single entry perspective, that if you, again, another way you could maybe be different with Connors. And we talked about this with Casey and Connors, and funny enough, they're both in the lineup. This is what Noto and I had mentioned, was what's another way to get different than with them almost. And I said all in the Wednesday show and corrected myself because it wasn't nearly going to be all, but I said a bunch of people using Connors as 6th man in are going to have a 5-figure dude in their lineup. They're just gonna, because there's a lot of opportunity. There's so many value plays in the 7Ks. There's so many guys that people want to play, and you can easily get up to any of Xander all the way up to the top with DJ. So loved going with this balanced construction and glad to see it take down. Again, not one that I was going to be on, but if you look at this here, just what are your thoughts on this one, TJ? We got Spieth, Reed, Decky, Smith, Casey, Connors. I see a few things, but I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a good single entry, one lineup build kind of lineup. Obviously a little bit more on the chalky side, but at the same time, getting guys, Reed, Matsuyama, that he or she knew would be good pivot plays. So I like that. Again, if you're going to play Spieth, Casey, and Connors, got to find a way to get at least a little bit different elsewhere. Can't just be hammering all of the chalk. So really, really solid lineup. And again, people that have the right makeup, I would say, to play and to compete at Augusta, and people that have had success in this tournament in the past. And also agree with what you said about this tournament in general. I played this one as well because I thought that the payout structure was at least a little bit more reasonable in terms of not being super top heavy. So wish they would run ones like this more often, where at least, second place is 50% of first. But yeah, great lineup here.
Nicer to see that for sure. And one thing you just brought up too was with the lineup. I think you're right. Like, look, Spieth, Reed, green jacket holders. You've got Matsuyama, Smith, Casey, guys that have pressed in this thing plenty. And clearly, one of them was going to seemingly break through at some point. It was Hideki, and it made sense. A guy like him or Casey could definitely take this thing down. Smith, the November thing is one thing, but he's played well here before. So it was like not a super surprise to see him involved. And 16% is not crazy, but that's nice to see. And just made sure with Reed and Matsuyama. And again, it came back to a couple $100 on the table, a little bit of a different structure. And sometimes that's all it takes to get different. Flava Flav, another guy we see all the time. Shout out to him, but looks like pretty similar lineup. So Casey, Connors, Leishman, Spieth. So it's Bryson, Hideki versus, funny enough, ex-Finau. His best lineup wasn't even a Matsuyama lineup. That can, just goes to show what you can do here. I know Finau let some guys down, but still nice to see. And you look at this build again, how can you get different? Connors as your fifth man in, using two guys in the 9K, but also a 10K guy and fitting it with Xander. And then you could still get the chalk in there with Casey. You still have Casey, Spieth, and Connors, good chalk, if you will. And then you've got just enough different, and the whole construction's different, which Flava Flav, Fate Bender, these guys that we're just not going to stop seeing at the top. They're just going to continuously be there. And if you're not, that's why we're studying this stuff. And people might say it's stupid. You're looking at results. Like, obviously we know who's going to be in the lineups of the winners. That's why we're trying to take it in a different direction and look at maybe why those guys are where they are and why we see them here every single week. It's no surprise. So again, shout out to Flava, shout out to Saul Goodman, the ultimate troll on Twitter. Love to see it. Great dude overall. Just fun to mess with. And he loves messing with people, but had himself a lineup. He was trying to fend off some stuff and get himself a decent cash. 30K is a very nice Sunday. I think he won almost 60 from what he posted. I saw on just over $1,000 in entries. So, love watching his stuff. You don't follow him on Twitter, it's a great follow. He says he's going to get back to trolling a little bit more, and we'd love to see that. So hopefully he does. It's always a good time, but JT Spieth, best friends, as we know, eating the hot dog on the hill back in the days. That's the picture we all seen a million times. Hideki, the winner. Paul Casey, Zalatoris. There's no way he was touching that Connors chalk. He was never going to do that, but he got lefty in there. And I kept asking guys about lefty, and he didn't really come through. He did enough. Like, it was, 6,600 made the cut. He did more than Rory. Hell, let's talk about that. But, it's another guy like a Justin Rose that kind of just came through in the clutch and did his thing at a course that he knows very well. And that's the big takeaway for me, right? Have you played well at Augusta? Can you play well here? And do you know it well enough, especially on things like Sunday pins and things like that? I talked about it on the Sunday round 4 show, just saying, like, that matters, right? Coming out here on a Sunday and knowing these pins and placements and where you need to put the ball is a huge advantage. And obviously JT, Spieth, all these guys are great plays. Any thoughts on his lineup before we flip to Noto?
Yeah, another thing where playing 3 of the chalkier guys and JT, Spieth, and Casey, but then making sure to get different elsewhere with Hideki, obviously Phil, and then Zalatoris, who I'm surprised that he came in at 11% in the 888. I would have actually expected him to be a little bit higher end in some of the higher buy-ins. So yeah, nice lineup. Congrats to Saul Goodman. I saw the tweet as well. He must have had the same lineup in a couple other tournaments.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Beautiful. I think he only plays a single entry type thing, or at least uses that as his main everywhere, but it was good to see. And yeah, the thing here is too, just to point out, just naturally, but just to point it out is, Phil Mickelson at 3%. You knew he was going to be somewhere in that range. Once you do that in a tournament of 1,000 people with almost $1,000 on the line, you can pretty much do whatever you want after that. Whether or not it comes through is whatever, but that's always to my point and joke that I make of, a guy doesn't fail on, in your lineups because he's 36% owned on DraftKings.com. He just either has a good week or he doesn't. It has nothing to do with the chalk. So once you've got a differentiator in there, like a Phil Mickelson, you can kind of go off the board a little bit more. And I know he's got ownership projections because he's reached out looking for them before, and, saying like, are they up yet? We got to get on our stuff here at Rotogrinders. Trolling again, get your shit together, man. Like, that's what he's saying to us. So, he's got those and could see that Zalatoris and Matsuyama are going to be sort of low enough that it's fine to get away with whatever else. So great job to him. And then lastly, we'll end the show on this, another Noto lineup. And this is the one I said earlier that I was hinting at. Can't feel bad for the guy. He had himself a good week, but honestly, Noto, love you, man. I thought for sure this was taking this thing down. And I know you're saying like, how so? There's 33 points out there. You're thinking, what are you talking about? And my thoughts are this: look at this lineup: Connors, Finau, Bryson. Like, look at the Palmer, Connors, Finau, Bryson. All 4 of those guys actually. We'll give Spieth a pass because he decided to show up on the back 9 once he knew he was rinsed and done. But man, these guys did nothing on Sunday. These other 4. Bryson, Finau, Connors, and Palmer. And look, there's no Brysons. Here's one Bryson. So there's one Bryson out there. You know what I'm saying, though. Look back through them yourself. You can check them out. My point is he had a lot of upside and opportunity here. Call it 50, call it 100 is what it is, man. Still a great week for Noto, but this was a different lineup altogether. He only had 3 lineups in this, TJ. We looked at his lineup earlier, didn't have a 10K guy in it, left $800 on the table, was certainly very strategic. And it just goes to show, and again, Noto's extremely sharp, as we know, love doing shows. I'm happy that I get to be on with him. It's amazing that I think, if you just look at that, is the thought process of what you need to do in the $10 with 473,000 people, or the $100 or $5, whatever it might be, 5 and 10, I believe he duped his set. But the point is you do have to be different. You have to adapt to the type of tournament you're in. And if you're not doing that, that's where you can make some mistakes as well. You have to know going in what your plan is, and certainly had himself a good plan here. It makes, perfect sense to me. He was telling me Bryson was going to win this thing, get on him Wednesday night. I was telling him Rory was going to win this thing. They both backfired. Bryson at least made the cut. But what are your thoughts here, TJ? A little bit different build type.
Yeah, no, I think you said it well, where you can see how high level a player is just able to get there in 2, pretty different ways, 2 different roster constructions. That's why Noto is one of the best in the business, and we're super lucky to have him here on the team over at Rotogrinders. But really strong build here from both 6 solid golfers, getting away from some of the playing Spieth and Connors, but then getting different in some other spots. Bryson unfortunately didn't come through. I mean, it's always a shame when your most expensive golfer is the one that puts up the least amount of points. That's always a heartbreaker. But great showing from Noto, not just in this lineup, but across the board this week. And I think it really goes to show when you're, competing in the higher stakes, small entry stuff, while also competing in the MME stuff, just shows that he's got a very deep understanding, not just of, PGA and the players, but of how to approach these different tournaments and really from a DFS strategy standpoint. So shout out Noto. Well done this week. And shame he couldn't get all the way to the top, but I can sense it coming. The RG team's firing a bit. We had STL last week. Now we've got Noto. Now we just need you and me getting to the top here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll keep things moving.
Yeah, if we're talking about the Tuesday show, that means it's my turn this week, the RBC Heritage. So, we'll say that, and then we'll give you your shot next week, TJ. But hey, I'll be happy with either of us. I'll be happy if Cards and Noto go after it again. Absolutely. I thought it was a great week. Back to the lineup with Noto real quick. Just like I said, the Connors 5th man in. I'll take credit for that. I sold him on that on the show. I think he mentioned it after. He loved Spieth. We both love Finau under that, at that ownership. So I just think it's just a beautiful build all around. Love that he adapted to both. And yeah, next time he'll win the thing. So anything else, TJ, before we get out of here? Otherwise, let the people know where they can find you, and then what you've got upcoming for this week for the RBC Heritage.
Yeah, just another awesome Masters tournament. We have to wait a whole nother year this time. Unfortunately, we don't get the short break back to Masters like we did after November, but plenty more majors to come. And yeah, back at it with the RBC Heritage this week. Should be an interesting one with I was taking a quick look at pricing. You have DJ and Cantlay as the 2 most expensive guys coming off missed cuts. I think that'll be a interesting dynamic heading into this week. And I'll be on my standard content schedule, have the Value Plays article coming out tomorrow, doing the expert rankings, all of that good stuff. And you guys can find me on Twitter at TJL5124DFS.
Awesome, man. It's going to be a good week. I'm excited. You guys know where to find me on Twitter at ToeTagginTambo. Hit me up in the Discord here at RG if you have any questions. Had a pretty good week. Sad to see Masters go, like you said, but we are into major season now. We're getting lots of opportunities that are going to fire at upcoming. So the PGA is just a short month away. I believe after RBC Heritage is the Zurich Classic. So I'm not sure. Usually DK takes a week off and sleeps for a little bit on that one because it is a team event. So I'm not sure exactly how that'll look from a content perspective, but you guys know where to find me on everything else. The Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast will be out later today with Kenny Kim. Got the Tuesday show with Noto and Cards. Wednesday this week with a special guest. Wrapping up everything as always, going through some lineup construction, ownership, things like that going into the tournament. Other than that, thank you and good luck.